Recently, something was posted online. It gets updated with each new region as new characters come out. Analyzing this piece of content will put our knowledge of every single character to the test. I'm of course referring to the dance video featuring every single playable character in the game at the time. What else? However, watching this made me wonder about something very important. Would these characters actually participate in a massive choreographed dance in-universe? I know every player thought the same thing, so I decided to go through their lore one by one looking for an answer. So get ready for the most ridiculous tier list you've ever seen. Probably not, there's some really weird ones out there. The Genshin Dancer tier list. Also, I'm gonna do this spoiler-free just so everyone can watch it. Also, I obviously tried to release this before Snezhnaya, but it turns out putting effort into videos makes them take a lot longer, so just pretend it's still before 7.0. First things first, let's define the tiers. I don't want to get too complicated, so there will be 4. We have a yes, they would happily do it. A maybe, they would need some amount of convincing, but probably would with the right incentive. Then no, they would almost certainly not do it. And at the top, we have a tier for even more than just a yes. Characters that would be so for it that they would take an active role in making it happen. We have over 100 characters to get through, so let's get started. Let's fill up the top tier first. Considering we've had multiple dancing events in the game, and Morlani is the one who organized them,
let's get this dance party started!
I guess she goes up here. With her, we have Nilu, who would absolutely go out of her way to help set this up.
Very Nilu, can you teach Parisara how to dance? Oh, of course! How about we start off with the most basic steps?
I think I will also put Farina up here, as she's a big fan of dance and she would probably insist on being in charge if she was going to participate. And for the sneak pick, I'm gonna put Traveler here. It wouldn't be Traveler's idea, but let's be honest. If this mass dance were to happen, Traveler would be the one asked to go and convince everyone to join. And we would. And that falls within the criteria for being in this tier. Next, Barbara. She was excited about Alice's Tevat Idols idea, and while back then it was Alice doing the heavy lifting, I could definitely see Barbara taking the reins now, or at least taking an active role in getting this dance-off set up. Next, Kachina. I wouldn't have put her here until the most recent dance event, where we learn that Kachina did in fact help set up the choreography for the dancers there, and that's part of the qualification for this tier. She might be shy, but when push comes to shove, she gets the job done, so I think she belongs in this tier. That settles this tier for now, so in the next group let's tackle the confirmed dancers. Eula is an experienced dancer, though A, dancing is a more personal thing for her, and B, it's not really this style. Still, reading her profile, I get the impression she would join up, even just for the sake of physical training.
It takes 2 to tango. Shall we?
Gaming is also a dancer, though again, this isn't exactly a Wushu dance. Nonetheless, I think he'd happily do it just the same. Next, Xilonen. Though more of a casual dancer, I think she still qualifies, as dancing seems to be a ubiquitous pastime among all the children of the Echoes, and I think she'd be totally willing to participate. She might even help organize, but I'm not sure about that, so I'll keep her here. Yeah, I know someone is gonna say that all she does is sleep, and that means she wouldn't, but that's mostly just to avoid Mawika. The Soul Blazers event proved she's willing to put an effort into fun stuff. Then we have Yunjin, who, like some of the others, is a professional dancer of a different style, but I think she'd be happy to learn this style too.
I'm going to keep rocking out at Xinyan's gigs, every week.
And finally, perhaps a controversial placement, Ayaka. We know she likes dancing, but I'm not putting her in yes. She goes in maybe, for one reason only, and that's because she repeatedly refused to join Tevat's Idols with Barbara, so I'm not going to assume she'd join this without Traveler convincing her. Let's save some time with a rapid-fire round. All of the kids would do it, because they're kids. So that's Aino, Klee, Yayo, Prune, Diona, and Ito. Am I wrong? Prune and Diona seem like they'd act like they don't want to, but come on, you know they'd do it. Then there's Chi-Chi, who I think would want to do it, I'm just not entirely sure how capable she would be. But if we're talking about the actual dance in the video, then yeah, she'd do that. Though to be clear, this tier list isn't about how good they would be, just whether they would want to join in or not. I guess there's Sayu too, who's implied to be well into her teens at least, she's just short. Either way, if Klee got her to join the Little Hexen Circle, I think she might join the dance-off. But I do think it would take convincing, so that's a maybe. And the last quote-unquote kid, Paimon. I would have put her in maybe, but in the most recent dance-off event, she says she wants to dance too, as long as it's not too hard. So, no promises as to her abilities, but she's willing. You know what, why not add Sigewinne here too? She's not a kid, but Melusines seem to have a pretty childlike sense of fun.
No, I didn't put a sticker on your back.
So, she's in. Oh, and how could we forget Aoife? He's a kid. I mean, he says he's 5. Like, what are you gonna do, argue with in-game text? Next, let's go over the people who are not dancers per se, but they are performers, so they might be happy to add dancing to their resume. Venti, our local bard. He's all about music and poetry, but I bet he'd be happy to participate in a dance-off of this scale. Linny. He performs on stage as a magician, and I see no reason why he wouldn't be willing to join this performance as well. Lynette, well, she performs with Linny, but seems like she only does it because they're twins. I wouldn't put her in yes, but I think Linny could convince her to join. Jinyan, like Venti, is more about music, but I think she's in. Lastly, these two aren't exactly performers unless you count strength competitions, but Iansan and Varessa I think would both be in. Dancing is a heck of a workout, and they're both fans of that. Iansan might even help organize it, but I'll keep her here since dancing isn't her forte. Another rapid-fire round. Based on these characters' personalities, I'm pretty sure they are in, but I don't really know what else to say about them. Amber, Hu Tao, Yoimiya. You know they're in just for fun. Bennett. It might not go well, but he's in. Columbina. Seems like she'd do literally anything that seems even a little bit fun, including be a movie star and especially dance. Linnea, Navia, Xiangling. While not known for dance, they all seem outgoing and willing to give it a shot. Sino's got an all-business side, but his fun side would totally be down for a dance-off. Dahlia seems down for it, especially if Venti's in. And lastly, Jingcho. It's a part of his character that his outward appearance of nobility is just an act, and he's actually a big goofball. To me, that means he's in. We've been too positive on this project up until now, so let's populate the bottom tier with the most obvious ones. Rosaria, Alhaitham, Wanderer, Diluc? No way. All 4 of them hate fun way too much, and also seem to hate having to interact with other people at all. I could maybe see Wanderer if the right people tell him he has to, but still no. I would say the same about Kujo Sara as well, but I think she'd do it if Raiden Shogun did. Problem is, I don't think Raiden Shogun would do it either. Yae Miko might be able to get her to do it, but again, I don't think Yae Miko would be that interested either. The Shrine Maidens used to dance at festivals, though definitely not this style, and Miko might not have joined them, especially considering it was her idea to put a stop to that tradition. That said, I think if you could somehow arrange a deal where all 3 go in together, you might be able to pull it off, and I think convincing Yae Miko would be your only hope. So I'll put her at the bottom of maybe, but the other 2 in no. Next, Fremine is pretty much the biggest introvert in the entire game, so I think he's out. Then I think it's just so far out of character for Neuvillette that he would never do it. Same goes for Zhongli as well. Their favorite thing to do is stand there stoically, and that's not conducive to dancing. I'd put Ayato with them as well. He's more easygoing than the 2 of them, and he seems slightly more likely to agree, but I still think it's a no. Then we have Zhao, who I think would refuse and use his karma as an excuse, saying that he would be a danger to everyone else in the dance, even though Vision wielders seem to be able to survive his presence without issue. Even when Traveler asked him to join the Waterborne Poetry event, the most he was willing to do is watch from afar. Lastly, the twin. At this point, there's not even a way to ask them, but even if we could, no. Ask again at the end of the game, and then we'll see. We need some more maybes, so let's go through the characters where a dance-off is super out of character for them, but I think they might still be willing to participate with enough convincing. Albedo. If you get Klee's help, I bet you could convince him. Durin? If you can get Albedo, then you can probably get Durin. In fact, he might do it regardless, since he's happy to try new things. Yeah, I think I'll just put him in yes. Durin might even be able to drag Wanderer along, but I have my doubts. Collei seems like she'd refuse just out of being shy, but with the help of some friends, I bet she'd try it. And I bet she'd love it. Sucrose, same deal, but I think she'd be harder to convince. But if you convince Collei, I bet she'd help you convince Sucrose. Inefa, I know we'll get her to do it. Beidou and Ningguang. If you could convince one of them, she'd help you convince the other.
Hey, check you out. Looking pretty fancy.
Only a true treasure catches the eye of Captain Beidou. Seems I've struck gold with this one.
And I think you could convince Ningguang on that basis. Despite being the closest thing to a ruler of Liyue, she's down to have fun sometimes. Beidou might need a few drinks first, but that's no problem. Lastly, Dori. Dancing does seem in character for her, but I'm not sure about a whole dance-off. However, if you compensate her with Mora, she's in. I'll put her in maybe, since that counts as needing convincing. Now let's get to some controversial picks, because this tier list is so serious that people are gonna have such strong feelings about character placement. I joke, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised. Let's operate under the assumption that Traveler is the one recruiting everyone. So anyone who would agree without complaint just because it's Traveler asking get to go in yes. And I think that describes Kokomi. She has energy issues and it seems out of character for her, but I think she'd make an effort for Traveler. And if she's in, I bet Goro would join too. But not just because Traveler asked, so he'll be a maybe. Then Tartaglia. It's hard to think any of the Harbingers would be higher than maybe, but I think Child wants to be friends with Traveler enough that he'd say yes right away. Kaching is not a dancer, but reading this makes me think she likes to push herself outside of her comfort zone, so I think she would agree, especially if it's Traveler asking.
Well, do you like it?
Lastly, Layla. I suppose it depends on what time of day the dance occurs and when Traveler asks. Is it spoilers to be more specific? Whatever, I'll just say normally she'd be a no, but Traveler asking could up the odds, so I'll call it a maybe. Some more placements that might come as a surprise. Nicole. Surely a being who's been around since nearly the dawn of civilization as we know it and exists to guide humanity wouldn't cut loose and go dancing. Except what she wants most is to be human. And what's more human than that? I think she would. While we're on the subject, Tsubai. Same deal, minus the wanting to be human part. But even so, I think her love for humanity would lead to her being happy to join everyone for a dance. Lohan? He's presented as Mr. Psycho Killer Guy, but really he likes fun just as much as anyone else. Except these guys. So I think he's a yes. Fischl? Yeah, she acts like she's better than everyone, but she's just RPing. She'd have fun doing this and she knows it. So she'd break character just for a little while. Yelan? She seems like she's all business all the time, but she's also a thrill seeker and decides what to do in her free time almost at random, so I think she'd be down to dance. How about Charlotte? Before the latest Fontanalia Film Festival, I'd have said maybe. But if she's willing to star in a film, it seems likely she's willing to branch out and try new fun things. For the same reason, I'll put Emily down as a yes as well. While we're on the subject, our latest character, Sandrone. This would be a clear no, but if you factor in Columbina asking her, I think it's worth a maybe. Dia is an interesting one. She has expressed interest in dancing. She says she's tried it before and even bought a dress for it. Yes, that means Dia canonically has a stunning new outfit. Hoyo, where is it at? Thing is, that was all for Dunyarzad, and she's not invited because she's not playable. Plus, Dia said she wouldn't want to do an actual choreographed dance, but there's the implication that she might change her mind, so she's a maybe. Lastly, Nahida. Sure, she's an Archon who has a constant responsibility to her nation, but I'm sure the God of Wisdom knows the importance of taking time to do something fun once in a while. I think she's in. Speaking of Archons, Mawika. Again, some might say an Archon with the burden of a nation on her shoulders wouldn't join a dance-off. And they also say that Mawika's character trailer where she sings for the Natlan band wasn't canon and was just metaphorical. Except it is canon. So not only does Mawika go in yes, but so do Auroran, Chaska, and Kinich. It might seem out of character, but if they do this, then I'm pretty sure they'll do this if it's to represent Natlan. Also, Aoife for real this time, because if Auroron will do it, then so will he. He wouldn't let Auroron show him up like that. And to round out the Natlan cast, Citlali ain't doing it. She avoids basically every single Natlan group event, and she'd avoid this too. I don't think Traveler could convince her either, because I don't think you can convince Citlali to do something she doesn't want to do. Speaking of leaders, I also think Varka would do it. He likes fun, and if Varka would do it, other knights could possibly be convinced to join him. Jean, I think would be a tough sell, but I think there's a chance, so I'll put her in maybe. Kaya, he seems pretty outgoing, what with randomly agreeing to star in an improvised stage performance, so I bet he'd be happy to dance. Mika is described as extremely shy and not wanting to draw any attention, and I can't see him agreeing. Lisa also doesn't seem like a dancer, but I don't see any reason why she'd refuse. She just does what she wants, and she might decide she wants to join in. Who knows? So that's a maybe. Noelle and Razor probably wouldn't join normally, but if Varka asks them, they might do it. They're both maybes. Now for the hard part of the video. There are a bunch of characters where I honestly have no idea how they would react to this invitation. Not only are these just guesses, but I don't have much to say, so let's just get it done rapid fire. Kirara, Toma, Sethos, they seem like they'd be down for it. Escoffier, Kave, and Itlua doesn't seem in their wheelhouse, but I bet they could be convinced. Kazuha, Hazel, Yanfei, they seem like they'd be a little more into it than the previous three, but I'd still say maybe. Baiju, I assume he would decline for health reasons, but who knows. Chongyun might join if Jingcho brings him. Tagnari might join if Kole does, just to make her more comfortable, plus Sino would definitely pressure him. Candace, don't know, but she dresses like a belly dancer, so I'm gonna arbitrarily say yes. Mizuki doesn't seem in her wheelhouse, but I think Traveler could convince her, so I'll call it a maybe. Faruzan doesn't seem like she'd have any interest. Flint's is really hard to pin down, but he once told a story from the days of the Beli Tsar in which various fae were dancing at a ball, and the story seemed to imply he was among those who did not partake, so I'll put him in no. Lanyan doesn't have any dancing in her stories, but her elemental skill is called Swallow Wisp Pinion Dance, and she seems fun, so I'm calling it a yes. Yehoda, her backstory consists of single-handedly massacring an entire rival gang before becoming Nefer's goofy assistant. I'll call that a maybe. Kuki Shinobu seems to like to try new things, so I think she'd do it. Mona offered to pay her and she's probably in? I'll call that a maybe. Lauma also doesn't have a strong indication one way or the other, but I think she could be convinced, especially if Columbina does it. Then there's a few where I also don't have much to say except that you'd probably have to convince them as a group. First, Chiori and Chevreuse. Chiori seems like she'd be open to it, and I bet they would challenge each other to join up. I think they would, but it wouldn't be an immediate agreement, so I'll leave it at maybe. Next, Ganyu, Shenhe, and Shanyun. I don't think any of them would agree to it in a vacuum, but Shanyun would probably encourage both Ganyu and Shenhe to join up. And if Traveler suggested that Shanyun join them, just to set an example, I think you could get all three, but it's still a maybe. There's only 5 characters left, and I'm sure everyone has an assumption of where they will go. Let's see if we agree. Nefer doesn't seem like she'd be interested, but there's also no reason she'd object. For the right incentive, there's a lot she's willing to do, so I think there's a good chance Traveler could find a way to convince her. Risley also doesn't seem like a dancer, nor someone known for going outside his comfort zone, but he does have a pretty easygoing attitude most of the time. I don't think he would hate the idea, so again, I think there's a possibility he could be convinced. It's also hard to imagine Clorinde wanting to participate, but until her story quest, I bet it would also be hard to imagine her as a prolific tabletop RPG game master. There's clearly more to her hobbies than meets the eye, and combine that with Neuvillette saying she's not as stoic as she appears, I think there's justification for putting her down as a maybe. Arlecchino. Surely I could have put her with the obvious no's earlier in the video. But Arlecchino makes it a point to keep all of her thoughts and feelings a mystery. Sure, she acts like an emotionless killing machine, but is she really? For all we know, dancing like this could be something she always wanted to do. But probably not, so I'm putting her down as a no. And lastly, we have Skirk, someone who despises all human contact, lives under the constant shadow of an unstoppable monster who told her that he will take away everything she loves, already had everything she loves taken away once before, and thinks of absolutely nothing but gaining more power. There's no way she'd ever do this. But that was before her story quest. I said I wouldn't spoil anything, so all I can say is that the Skirk of present day just might be willing to take a little time one day to cut loose and have some fun, just for a few minutes. Wow, what a lore breakdown, delving into every character in the game, except the ones I glossed over, but sometimes there just wasn't anything to read to figure out how the character would respond. Like every tier list ever, I'm sure plenty of people will disagree, possibly vehemently. At least I hope so. That's more engagement, baby. Anyway, thanks for watching my ridiculous video. If you like hearing me talk about Genshin, consider subscribing. I usually do more serious lore commentaries than this, with the occasional guide video sprinkled in. Expect more of that in Snezhnaya. Did I finally get it right, chat? Oh yeah, I guess there's 3 more characters in the video. Capitano? No. Rerir? No. Aloy? Nobody cares, you're not real.